Hello everyone, happy Sunday morning. Today we're going to be studying lesson 6, titled David and Saul. But before we go into the lesson, my name is Heidi Silva. I'm from Mariah Heights, California, and we're going to be studying together this week. So the opening verse, it's found in Psalm 27 verse 1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? And the opening note is found in The Desire of Ages, page 356. Those who are true to God need not fear the power of men, nor the enmity of Satan. So let's get into our lesson. And if you see me looking towards this direction, I have some notes here. Let me grab my Bible. All right, so the first question is asking us to describe David's attitude toward his predator. And it's asking us to read 1 Samuel chapter 26, verse 2. It's 1 Samuel 26, verse 2, and it says, Then Saul arose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, having 3,000 chosen men of Israel with him, just to seek one man, to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. And then verses 7 through 16. So David and Abishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping within the trench, and his spear stuck in the ground at his bolster. And Abner and the people lay round about him. Then said Abishai to David, God hath delivered thine enemy into thine hand this day. Now therefore let me smite him, I pray thee, with the spear even to the earth at once, and I will not smite him the second time. And David said to Abishai, Destroy him not, for who can stretch forth his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? David said furthermore, As the Lord liveth, the Lord shall smite him, or his day shall come to die, or he shall descend into battle and perish. So basically, David was leaving, vengeance to the Lord, right? The Lord forbid that I should stretch forth mine hand against the Lord's anointed. But I pray thee, take thou now thy spear that is at his bolster, and the cruse of water, and let us go. So David took the spear and the cruse of water from David's bolster, and they gat them away, and no man saw it, nor knew it, neither awakened, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord was fallen upon them. Then David went over to the other side, and stood at the top of the hill afar off, a great space being between them. And David cried to the people, and to Abner the son of Ner, saying, Answerest thou not, Abner? Then Abner answered and said, Who art thou that criest to the king? And David said to Abner, Art not thou a valiant man? And who is like to thee in Israel? Wherefore then hast thou not kept thy lord thy king? For there came one of the people in to destroy the king thy lord. This thing is not good that thou hast done. As the Lord liveth, ye are worthy to die, because ye have not kept your master, the Lord's anointed. And now see where the king's spear is, and the cruse of water that was at his bolster. So, what was David's attitude? If I had to summarize it in 2 words, I would choose the words respect and honor. Although, if we read a little bit more in the book of 1 Samuel, we know that it was not God's will for the children of Israel to have a king. The children of Israel, they're like, we want a king, we want to be like the other nations. And the Lord was like, okay, I will give it to you, a king. He chose Saul, okay? And David respected that. And though Saul, he did not remain following God's commandments and his will, and that's the reason why we see how his life, instead of going uphill, it went downhill, right? And another thing that, as I was reading here in the lesson, it just came to my mind. As soon as I read the verse where David says, I will not raise my hand against the Lord's anointed, I was reminded of my grandmother. I always remembered many times. My grandmother, she loved to have people over at her house. She would have people over for Sabbath lunch. People would stay at her house. And so she knew many pastors, many ministers. She knew a lot of people. And many times I would hear others like making unkind remarks about a pastor, about a minister, or another person in a position of leadership, right? And for example, a minister like, sometimes I heard like, I didn't like the pastor didn't do well the sermon, or he wasn't prepared, or they didn't agree with something that happened on in a meeting or something. And my grandmother, she would always say, like, how can you say that? Like, how can you let that come out of your mouth and talk against the Lord's anointed? And it just stuck with me, like wow, like, yes, God has chosen people. He has chosen people in leadership, ministers, pastors. God chose them. Yes, they're human. They commit mistakes, right? But it's still our duty to respect them, to honor them. I mean, look in here. David, he was being pursued. Saul wanted to kill David, and still David respected him. David honored him. And what a lesson for us, right? We need to keep that in mind. And of course, we also have to keep in mind that if the Lord put us in a position of leadership, if we are in a position that influences a lot of people, we need to always remember to keep ourselves in the paths of the Lord, so that we don't end up and repeat the same story as Saul, right? Question B. Why was Saul so dangerous even now? So why was he dangerous? Here in the note it says, after evil-minded men have engaged in doing and saying wicked things against the Lord's servants, the conviction that they have been in the wrong sometimes takes deep hold upon the minds. The Spirit of the Lord strives with them, and they humble their hearts before God and before those whose influence they have sought to destroy, and they may change their course toward them. But as they again open the door to the suggestions of the evil one, the old doubts are revived, the old enmity is awakened, and they return to engage in the same work which they repented of and for a time abandoned. Again they speak evil, accusing and condemning in the bitterest manner the very ones to whom they made the most humble confession. Satan can use such souls with far greater power after such a course has been pursued than he could before. So this is very serious. Tomorrow we're going to be getting a little bit more into what was the root, that of that evil that led Saul to this state. But we need to check our characters. We need to strive with the Lord in prayer, and so that we can change every day. So may the Lord help us, and may we all put these lessons and apply them to our lives individually, so that we can be a blessing and an example for those around us.